started here. Both players locked into what their leads are going to be to kick this one off. And on James' side of the field, we're already going to see Kyogre and Tornadus here. And we're also going to be met with Kyogre and Amoonguss.
Yeah, well, certainly Tornadus, it's been a powerful counter to Amoonguss as long as it's been around, way back in the video game championships in 2011 when the two Pokemon were first introduced. The two Kyogre facing off, something of a push, so you to an extent expect James to have an advantage here, but also Tornadus is very frail. It's going to be much more difficult to knock out the Pokemon on Meaghan's side of the field, so there's a type advantage for one trainer, but perhaps a stat advantage for the other.
Yeah, I was going to say, we did just see James's Kyogre move first there to Primal Revert, followed by Meaghan's Kyogre, so that's going to give a little bit of information to both of these players as we move forward with this mirror match between these two Kyogres.
Yeah, I love seeing the Tornadus out on James's side of the field. That Pokemon hasn't been quite as popular recently, but was one of the key Pokemon earlier in the season. James, like we mentioned, one of those players who have been fantastic all season long. Cleverly, I think, utilizing what he learned early in the season to use his team for this World Championships.
Meaghan keeping it a little bit safe here. Going to protect the Amoonguss, maybe not draw too much attention to it. Potentially actually going to bait out this Z move here, using it very, very early on James's side. Gives a lot of information about what that Tornadus is holding, but who is the target of this Supersonic Sky Strike?
Could be critical here. I mean, he does have the option of wearing down the Kyogre. We'll have to see which trainer made the right call. It does go into the Protect.
Gonna go into the Protect, so Meaghan with a great read on that will keep the Amoonguss alive through that Supersonic Sky Strike. Water Spouts, though, now coming out from James' side of the field, so this is now the second time we've seen that Kyogre move first in its ability to attack. Will do a little bit of chip damage to Meaghan's Kyogre, but Meaghan's Kyogre firing back with a Scald into the Tornadus slot. Wow, Tornadus does hold on.
Yeah, Tornadus showing off some bulk there. Kyogre able to get a single target attack boosted by the rain. Tornadus is one of those Pokemon you typically think about as not being so strong on the defensive side, but very important that it survives there. Amoonguss, on the hand, able to mitigate most of the damage from that Tornadus. James probably not super excited to see that, but at least if this Amoonguss is holding a Focus Sash, as we've seen several hold over the weekend, no longer a factor, and this Hurricane will be perfectly accurate because of the rain.
Yeah, it is going to be perfectly accurate, and it's going to be accurate in achieving that knockout, so Amoonguss not able to stick around to set up anything to draw attention to it. Now, Water Spout going to be full value here into Meaghan's Kyogre, moving yet again first. But this time, Meaghan not opting for a single target attack. Going to do some AoE damage to make sure they confirm the knockout onto Tornadus.
It picks up the knockout of Tornadus, but that Water Spout was much less powerful than the Water Spout from James' side of the field. Water Spout, one of those moves that does more damage if the Pokemon is healthy, and unfortunately for Meaghan, it's tough to pull that off when you're slower. James gets the opportunity to get Water Spout out first, reduces the damage there, and nice little play there. James perhaps trying to get a cheeky getting Xerneas in once Kyogre has kind of already been taken care of, but the Tapu Koko on Meaghan's side of the team is going to make that a little bit trickier, where that Fairy Electric type Pokemon going to set the terrain, threaten a lot of damage to either of these Pokemon, but still two very healthy legendary Pokemon on James' side of the field. He already has the Pokemon advantage, and the Kyogre on Meaghan's side is also very close to being knocked out.
The fourth Pokemon that both James and Meaghan brought to this Game 1 is going to be very fundamental here to potentially finish everything off in the end game. We might even see that here. Meaghan going to show they brought Metagross to this battle. Does not want to sacrifice Kyogre just yet. Ooh, but a good chunk of damage into the Xerneas, does about half.
Yeah, Xerneas going to get this Geomancy here. Going to boost its stats relatively uncontested. Metagross typically knows Bullet Punch, so Xerneas is going to have some trouble on the next turn potentially. But that Kyogre didn't use Protect and get a full power attack off here. If that's another Water Spout, James is going to have a ton of damage on the board just a few turns in.
Yeah, we've already seen that Kyogre worked so effectively against Meaghan's team, but it's not quite over yet. Water Spout is going to go off. Will hit both Pokemon on Meaghan's side of the field for a ton of damage. A knockout onto the Metagross, but Tapu Koko barely holds on.
And Tapu Koko holds on, but that fainted Metagross isn't going to be able to use any bullet punches. Tapu Koko now nearly in just as much trouble. Wild Charge only does about half of Xerneas' health, and now Xerneas, the fastest Pokemon in the field, two very weakened Pokemon on the other side of the field, the only Pokemon left to oppose it. James is likely going to take a very easy 3-0 to start off this set. Both players playing very aggressively here, but James able to trade a little bit more efficiently, has a big lead to close out this first game.
The leads for James were very important, but I think this is a dazzling gleam away from James taking Game 1 in this match.
Yeah, kind of a decisive victory there where, you know, we've mentioned a little bit how players have largely played a little bit more conservatively over the course of this weekend. Nothing conservative about that game. Both trainers just attacking aggressively right from the beginning. Meaghan does a great job of blocking the Z move from that Tornadus, but winds up being that no Z move, no problem. The Hurricane, plenty to pick up the knockout, and there's just not much Meaghan can do from there. Certainly tough to lose the first game at this point in the tournament, but you've got to assume by now both of these players have lost plenty of game ones and still gotten to where they've gotten. So both players probably want to take some time here, think through what their best moves are and adjust. I agree with what you said before. I think Meaghan can't have that lead matchup again and expect to win, where Tornadus has just too much of an advantage against that Moongus, has a ton of pressure. Even if she does have that focus sash and hadn't used Protect, the combination of Water Spout and a flying type move, it's going to pick up a knockout on the Moongus regardless of whether or not it has a focus sash. So that's just not going to work.
Oh, and the Kyogre mirror as well goes in James's favor because of the speed stats there. We saw James's Kyogre move 3 times in a row first before Meaghan's, and that's going to give Meaghan a lot of information on how to adjust for this game too.
Yeah, we definitely learned for sure. No speed tie this time. It's a quicker Kyogre in James's side of the field, and that is a big advantage in this mirror. You know, perhaps in some other matchups, it'd be easier to take advantage by using something like Trick Room, but not an option here. There is potential for Tailwind for both of these players, so they could go that route, but James showing that even though he is Tornadus, a Pokemon famous for using Tailwind, there's no need to control the speed when you can just knock out all the Pokemon on the opposing team instead.
Yeah, definitely didn't have to worry about speed being on James's side, but we're locked into the Pokemon that are going to be the leads for this game too between James Baek and Meaghan Rattle, and really looking forward to see if Meaghan does make an adjustment here for these leads. Already looking right now that Yveltal coming to the field here with Tapu Koko.
And this time Meaghan having a lot more offense available, but James counters it perfectly, brings out the Xerneas to face down the Yveltal, and you got to imagine that he's pretty happy with his lead matchup for the second game in a row.
Yeah, the matchup does put Meaghan on the back foot, forcing Meaghan to think about how to reposition their Pokemon in order to mitigate some of this damage. You might see a Geomancy get off here for free.
Yeah, I think the one important difference, if James were to think about the Geomancy compared to the last game, is that Incineroar being on the field instead of Kyogre is a lot weaker. One of the things that let Geomancy be so effective in the previous game was that Kyogre was still on the field, used that Water Spout, prevent Metagross from coming in and being a problem. This game, if James were to go for some sort of fake-out Geomancy, Metagross can come in and make it difficult for Xerneas to actually get any attacks off, and we do see it coming in right away.
Yep, gonna reposture a little bit here, providing some pressure into the Xerneas, but Xerneas gonna go ahead and Geomancy and get ready to charge.
And no fake out from the Incineroar too, so perhaps trying to get a knockout of that Metagross switch in. If James called that, that would be huge early in this second game.
Would be absolutely huge. I mean, Meaghan is relying on that Metagross to be able to prevent Xerneas from dishing out major damage. Does get a chance to use Tailwind though, Yveltal able to get that off, but now it's time for Incineroar to move. It's a Flare Blitz.
Which Pokemon will this go into? It'd be huge if it's into the Metagross.
It's into the Yveltal.
Yveltal instead. So still important. That's a Pokemon that is important to weaken as one of the legendary Pokemon, but Metagross does get in safely. That's huge for Meaghan. Not only is that, but she also gets the Tailwind up as well. So this Metagross is going to be a huge problem for Xerneas. Assuming it is the sort of Metagross that is holding a Metagross light, it'll be able to Mega Evolve, be quicker than the Xerneas, and that Geomancy boost is effectively not going to do anything at all until the Tailwind expires. James is going to need to play a little defensively here, try to stall out the turns of the Tailwind, and then use Xerneas to prevent Yveltal from getting another one up afterward.
Metagross sitting pretty right now. James might have to reposture a little bit here, but it looks like Meaghan's going to actually withdraw first. Yveltal switching out for the Tapu Koko that we saw lead this game for Meaghan. And Incineroar also switching out on James' side. Let's see what that third Pokemon is going to be. It's going to be Tornadus. Great switch in for Meaghan on this one.
Yeah, Meaghan not being threatened by any damage. Tornadus likely coming in to try to get a Tailwind up, match that speed advantage so that Xerneas can again become the quickest Pokemon on the field.
Well, the thing that's going to be quick right now in that Tailwind is going to be Metagross. Metagross using Iron Head into the Xerneas slot, and that's going to be a one-hit knockout.
Oh, that's just huge. Meaghan calling that James is not going to protect Xerneas. He tries to play a little risky, and Meaghan takes advantage. That's a huge knockout. And now she's the one who has a big advantage in this game, too.
Absolutely. You can see the sigh of relief wash over her face there, knowing that the big threat on James's side of the field has been taken out here. But there's another one that Meaghan's still going to have to navigate, and it's going to be that Kyogre.
Yeah, this game is far from over. Kyogre there, we saw how effective it was in the first game. Meaghan's Tailwind is starting to get close to expiring, and James does have the option of getting up one of his own here. that Tornadus, with its prankster ability, going to be able to get up that tailwind most likely if James wants to, but if so, Tornadus is probably going to have to feint to enable that to happen. So James potentially could bet everything on Kyogre, try to get that 2-0 or 2-4 deficit, but get the speed advantage. Really tough spot. Meaghan has done a great job now of putting James on his back foot. The moment he opened the door and made a play that she could take advantage of, she was right there. Excellent play, and Meaghan doing everything she can to push this toward his second game.
Wonder if James got a little greedy there, trying to get too much damage in, really not worrying enough about Meaghan's position on the board here. But Incineroar now going to try to mitigate some of that attack pressure on Meaghan's side with that Intimidate, and we're getting ready to see Kyogre protect as well. So James very playing this safe.
Yeah, I think a much better play than going for the Tailwind. Doesn't go for the aggressive play. Gets the Intimidate out, which makes a big difference against both of these Pokemon, and won't take too much damage from this Iron Head.
Nope, just a little bit of chip there. Incineroar takes that one like a champ, but good read there to protect the Kyogre, knowing that Tapu Koko had that Kyogre in its sights.
Yeah, I think very wise by James just to calm this one down, kind of uses Tornadus to bait, says, hey, you know, I'm behind in this game, but I don't need to give up too much. But Nature's Madness from Tapu Koko is going to come out and do a bunch of damage to this Kyogre here.
It's going to do a lot and put it within striking range of Metagross to be able to finish it off. Iron Head going into the Kyogre slot is a lot, but it's not enough. Not super effective there, but Kyogre, because it's going to be able to hold on, is going to get a Water Spout out onto both of the Pokemon on Meaghan's side of the field. Not too much damage here, but chipping away little by little for both of these players.
Yeah, instead of getting the U-turn off, will allow Tornadus to re-enter the battle. Perhaps another opportunity to go for that Tailwind should he want to, or a powerful Z-move. Of course, both these Pokemon resist flying type attacks, which makes things a little bit tricky for that Tornadus, and they're so quick that things are tough for Kyogre too. Once again, James kind of attacking in a situation with that Kyogre where maybe you would normally expect him not to. Got pinned a little bit there where it was sort of hard to avoid, but I think kind of because he's behind in this match, he's been looking for opportunities to take advantage of Meaghan sleeping, but I think wisely she's kept up the pressure on those restricted Pokemon.
Ooh, Kyogre going for another Protect here, so we're just still playing it a little bit safe, and now Tornadus able to fire back with a Tailwind of its own.
This time does go for the Tailwind. He'll be the only player with a Tailwind, so he'll have a speed advantage likely for the rest of the game, but we'll have to see what cost that Tailwind comes at.
Well, Metagross is going to be able to use Iron Head into the Tornadus slot. Tornadus still takes that one on the chin, but a little bit more than half damage there. Tapu Koko again going to get a miss into the Protect on the Kyogre.
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad.
That's
where,
right,
you know, James at least gets the Tailwind off, doesn't lose too much. But again, you kind of just have to say, well, how does James actually come back in this game? The Pokemon on Meaghan's side are so healthy. Tornadus is going to have a hard time contributing too much with this matchup. And Kyogre's Water Spout has been greatly weakened by all this lost health. Because of that, likely going to need to focus on maybe either using some inaccurate attacks or focusing these Pokemon down one at a time. Either way, there's a lot that's going to need to go right for James to get out of this one, but it's far from over.
Far from over, but a little bit worried is Meaghan about some of the abilities that James has now with that Tailwind up. Going to protect the Metagross, and Tornadus going to do a little bit of damage. Does get confused, though, onto the Tapu Koko. That could be huge. Origin Pulse to finish this one off as well. Is it going to be enough to knock out the Tapu Koko with that rain on the field? Fires down on both Pokemon. Tapu Koko gets knocked out. Confusion not going to matter.
Yeah, so no need for the confusion, but that's still a good knockout for James. I certainly want to get rid of that electric-type Pokemon when both of the Pokemon he has remaining on the field are weak against electric-type attacks. Also important for James here that he was able to cash in that Tailwind. He spent the first turn of it by picking up a knockout. It's going to be very tricky for him if he doesn't have this game equalized or better by the time that Tailwind does expire. So first turn goes pretty well, gets a knockout, doesn't have to spend a Z-move to use it. And now with Yveltal coming out in the field, he's at least sort of threatening a Z-move in that slot. Some temptation probably for Meaghan to try to play defensively, grind this out. So Incineroar comes out, gets intimidated in both of these Pokemon, and we'll have the threat of Fake Out next turn.
Does have the threat of Fake Out, but you got to wonder whether or not James has the ability to switch Pokemon around anymore. Coming down to the wire a little bit for James and really wants to get some damage out. Sucker Punch. Ooh. Oh, Kyogre holds on here. Yveltal avoided the attack. Origin Pulse is only going to be able to hit Metagross on this one. Does enough for the knockout.
This is a big knockout. If Metagross had been able to attack there, likely would have finished the Kyogre off, but Sucker Punch just not enough. A really crucial Intimidate there by the Incineroar, just able to reduce the damage from the Yveltal enough that it wasn't able to knock out the Kyogre, but now we see the final restricted Pokemon from Meaghan's side of the field take the field, Kyogre.
Kyogre, and the last time we saw both of these Kyogres meet, the speed definitely went into James' favor, and you also have Tailwind up for a couple more turns here. Meaghan on the last two Pokemon, both pretty strong powerhouses though, and James doesn't have too much health left on that Kyogre.
A great time to bring this Kyogre in also. We've already seen that the Kyogre in James times is faster, but it can't really take advantage of that with Yveltal sitting there threatening a Sucker Punch. And with Kyogre next to it, Incineroar's in a lot of trouble too. There's no way it's going to be able to knock out Yveltal from here. Switching Tornadus in would mean certain doom. Really nice spot.
Ooh, we're actually going to see a Protect though from the Yveltal. Gonna bait out that fake out, at least from James's Incineroar. Kyogre, though, going for an Origin Pulse, is going to miss the Yveltal because of the Protect, but will still connect with the other Kyogre on Meaghan's battlefield.
Yeah, it's going to get some damage in this Kyogre, but it doesn't really stop the problem, which is that this Kyogre doesn't get a powerful Water-type attack here. The Water Spout comes down, and both these Pokemon are in trouble.
Definitely in trouble. Kyogre going to take a knockout there, and Incineroar as well. Meaghan doing a great job to tie up this series.
Yeah, that's a big 2-1 deficit. Tornadus going to come in here, but hard to imagine a way it's going to be able to take down this Yveltal and this Kyogre. It's a tough matchup to play Yveltal in, but Meaghan opts to bring it this game, leads it. It's out there for much of the battle, and it winds up being the contributions of that restricted Pokemon, even though it has such a tough time with Xerneas, that's able to help her push this game to a decisive, or this set to a decisive third game.
I mean, Yveltal just adds a lot of flexibility to the strategies that Meaghan can navigate in order to take a win here. But it is going to be 1-1 now, all tied up for James, Baek, and Meaghan Rattle, and it all comes down to a third game.
Yeah, I mean, that was a very different game from that game one. Pretty interesting to see how both of them will opt to adjust in game three. On James's side, it seems like he got burned a little bit where, he got that 1-0 advantage. He did something I actually like, what a lot of trainers do, which is that he realized that, well, my opponent's on her final game of the tournament potentially. I want to put the pressure on. If she makes one mistake, I'm going to win. Unfortunately for James, Meaghan did not make any mistakes. Every time that James left himself a little too vulnerable, she called it and was able to take that game pretty decisively. It'll be interesting to see me here. Do both players opt to play a little bit more conservatively? Or does James say, hey, I've got one more game for this. If I get my read, I'm going to win the game, so I'll just keep trying it.
It's been a big theme here for the Pokemon World Championships that you gotta take some risks in order to get that reward, and James is no stranger to having to do something a little bit riskier. Fortunately, those risks didn't quite pay off in game two the way that he was expecting them to, but both players don't need too much time in team preview. They know exactly what their win conditions are for this third and final game of the set.
I love when you see these quick team previews, both sides very confident in their strategies. They look pretty tense there, but I think both of them really believe they're going to take this one. Excited to see these two trainers face off one more time. The winner of this will move on to the semifinals of the World Championships. Huge match. Let's see what the trainers have decided to do.
Well, James is going to kick things off with the Kyogre and Amoonguss. Meaghan matching that with Tapu Koko and Yveltal. Two massive powerhouses on the field, but Tapu Koko threatening a lot against James's Kyogre.
Yeah, that Kyogre going to have a tough time. I think Meaghan learned from her first game where she needs to keep this offensive pressure on the field. It's going to be a little bit tricky to deal with this time. That Amoonguss next to Kyogre going to be some great protection. But Tapu Koko is tricky too. There's a lot of things it can do that makes life difficult for both of these Pokemon. And electric terrain it's placed on the field was also tough for Amoonguss too. Yveltal as a flying type Pokemon not going to get any advantage from the electric terrain. So potentially Amoonguss to try to use Spore on that Yveltal, but it is a great tool for Meaghan to have out in the field here. It makes it a little bit easier to play around this Amoonguss.
Depending on what's in the back, though, these players might want to consider doing some switches in order to save their big damage dealers. Play a little bit more conservatively, make sure they have some sort of end game as it comes down to the wire. And James recognizes, hey, I have something a little bit better in the back. It's going to be that Incineroar.
Yeah, I think it's a wise play. Incineroar potentially, well, definitely going to create some fake out pressure in the next turn unless something outrageous happens and it's knocked out. Likely going to see a Protect from the Kyogre there, not going to leave itself defenseless against the Tapu Koko, and there it is.
Yeah, that Protect is going to be James really playing this one safe here. Tapu Koko going for a Sky Drop, and it's going to be into the Incineroar slot, so no fake out pressure here.
Yeah, looking for a cheeky Sky Drop on the Amoonguss perhaps. Instead, we're going to see a Z move from this Yveltal. Likely going to the Protect of that Kyogre. Can't imagine she went for the Sky Drop, deliberately missed my Z move play. Not going to do a whole lot of damage after the Intimidate, but still, it's free damage on that Kyogre. Very important for Meaghan to start whittling down that Kyogre, weakening the effect of that Water Spout, and working toward getting it off the field for good.
Yeah, really wants to make sure that Kyogre can't come back from that dimension. Unfortunately, though, that Protect is going to save off a decent amount of that Z-move damage.
Yeah, really good play by James. Knows that that option's available. Meaghan probably kicking herself for not going for the free tailwind instead, but still in a pretty good position here. Not threatened too much. Doesn't have to worry about fake out from this Incineroar. We'll have to see what Yveltal and Kyogre opt to do this time.
Oh, Yveltal going for a foul play though, trying to just do some more damage to that Kyogre, knowing it's going to be a big problem if Meaghan has a Kyogre in the back. Origin Pulse though coming up from James is going to connect with both Pokemon on the field with a lot of damage, and U-turn from the Incineroar into the Tapu Koko slot, just doing more chip. Another rotation here from James.
Lots of weakened Pokemon on the field, but they're all quick enough relative to the Pokemon on the other teams that any of these three Pokemon could still get a lot done. A nice move by James to use that U-turn and get some positioning. Great time to have Xerneas out because there's a lot for Meaghan to consider on this next turn. You don't want to do anything that would make it easy for Xerneas to get a Geomancy off. A Dazzling Gleam would knock out both of these Pokemon, and an Origin Pulse would knock out both of these Pokemon too. Very precarious for Meaghan, where easily could lose both of these Pokemon. And James' side, he's definitely the one with the pressure here. He could attack with either of these Pokemon if he wants to try to make a read. Both of his supportive Pokemon are still pretty healthy and could potentially give him a lot of health here. He doesn't risk the Kyogre this time, opts to play a little bit more conservatively than he did in the previous game, and Incineroar is going to come in here and help Xerneas out.
Yeah, Incineroar, great support Pokemon for that Xerneas to help set up the Geomancy. And Meaghan now has to figure out a way to navigate these two big powerhouses on James's team. Xerneas specifically, but it is going to be a Nature's Madness to really help whittle away at that Xerneas' health. And Yveltal also going for a foul play. Ooh, gonna go into the Incineroar slot there. Not super effective, but it does at least try to get out some of that pressure from the Incineroar. Geomancy, though, going off without a hit.
Yeah, Xerneas gonna get a boost in stats. Pretty good damage put on it by that Nature's Madness. Always does half a Pokemon's current HP and damage, but Xerneas about to do some damage of its own, powering up completely, and it's in a really great spot. Unlike the last game, there's no Tailwind yet by Meaghan's side of the field, so Xerneas, the quickest Pokemon in the field, threatening a lot of damage. Plenty healthy now, where it doesn't need to worry about a Sucker Punch from Yveltal. That Metagross, perhaps, could be a factor here in checking Xerneas. So Meaghan's going to have to be a little bit more careful getting it on the field than she did in Game 1, where it was easily knocked out. And we've seen James is very eager to try to make some reads.
Eager to make some reads, but he still has no idea what Meaghan has in the very back here. Xerneas still taking a little bit of chip, but is able to fire off this Dazzling Gleam into both slots. Gonna get a double knockout, and will finally get to see what Meaghan has for the third and fourth Pokemon.
Yeah, I think James gets exactly the right Pokemon in the field there. He looked a little bit shaky in that game too, but he's really solidified things here. Xerneas now has a Amoonguss right next to it, protect it. Would able to be used Rage Powder to draw away any single target attacks. There's not a whole lot of time left in electric terrain, so James even has the option of kind of trying to stall things out and go for a Spore on one of these Pokemon. We do see Kyogre and Metagross once again the final Pokemon on Meaghan's side. Not really any other option, where that Mega Metagross is so important for checking Xerneas. Kyogre, just so much power, but I'm just not sure how you get through this one. She's going to have to play very carefully. She certainly has the tools to knock out all the Pokemon on James' side of the field, but she's going to have to make some really clever decisions because James, with all those supportive Pokemon left to help Xerneas, on top of that, albeit very weak in Kyogre, he's really got a lot going on his board now.
Yeah. Got to remember too, Kyogre, if it does get a chance to come in, is going to move faster than Meaghan's, and there's no capability of setting up Tailwind anymore. Rage Powder, though, trying to draw the attention away from Xerneas, but Xerneas gets to move before any of Meaghan's Pokemon do. Does about half to both. Iron Head, too.
Very important to knock out this Amoonguss. Can't afford to have Metagross's attacks pulled away next turn.
Ooh, good call, though, for the Ice Beam here from Meaghan. Is going to do quite a bit, but oh, Amoonguss hangs on!
Oh, that's really rough for Meaghan. No longer has that, or does not gain that option to use Bullet Punch on Xerneas. Because of that, a Rage Powder would allow it to use Dazzling Gleam again, get even more important damage down on both of these Pokemon. It'd be tough, I think these Pokemon could both survive that attack potentially, but it's at least going to force Metagross to Mega Evolve. Meaghan opts not to Mega Evolve it last turn, trying to dodge and intimidate, but perhaps failing to gain the power it needed to score that knockout in Amoonguss. I really like the logic of that play, but it might have backfired there.
Well, you're going to have to Mega Evolve now, because this might be the last-ditch effort in order to take out Amoonguss and Kyogre. So we're going to see that now as Metagross gets ready to do some damage. Amoonguss, though, Rage Powdering again, holding on with 10 HP, will not be able to survive a hit from either of the Pokemon that Meaghan is using here. Bullet Punch, gonna move first. will do enough to get the knockout onto Amoonguss. Critical hit's not going to matter there, but it all comes down to whether or not they'll be able to survive. Moonblast, though, coming out instead of a Dazzling Gleam. Kyogre, wow, is going to get the knockout there.
I think James realizes that, with Kyogre down, he's pretty safe now. Metagross still doing a lot of damage. Could knock out that Xerneas, but going to be really difficult for an intimidated Metagross to handle this Incineroar and the Kyogre that's in the back. James has played a really excellent third game where, he shows what he can do in the face of adversity. The second game doesn't go quite the way he wants it to, but then he locks this one down. It's been a flawless game so far, and he's looking really good at his odds of moving on to the semifinals.
Meaghan buying a little bit of time here to protect Metagross. Will eat the Moonblast and maybe trying to bait out that fake out there. Flare Blitz as well. James is going all in on the offensive to try to take out the last Pokemon that stands between him and that top 4.
Yeah, all he's got to do now is click those attacks. There's no way Metagross can knock out both these Pokemon at once. Bullet Punch is going to come into Xerneas here, probably take a knock. Oh,
it doesn't.
Going to survive. Not even going to get the Xerneas.
Wow, so Xerneas is going to be alive to finish this one off for James. Metagross going down. James takes this game and moves on to top 4.
A really excellently played set. They really see the best of both trainers over the course of that set. James in game 1